Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. It's True Crime with Jess Rose. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Tuesdays are my request evening. Thursdays stories that I like to bring to you. I'm also over on the TikTok, which is Jess Rose 5472. And if you'd like to join my Patreon, it's patreon.com/Jess Rose 5472. Or you could just watch and subscribe. That'd be amazing. Or just watch full stop. I'd love that too. I'd love that too. That'd be great. I'd really appreciate that. So, this evening's story is the Heartbreaking A.J. Freund Story. Now, I've heard his surname pronounced a few different ways, but I think it's Freund. So I'm going to pronounce it that way. Okay? Awful story. And I'm going to be 100% honest. I genuinely thought I'd done this story. I genuinely did. And I don't know why. Because I knew the story. I've known it well. I've known it for quite a long time. I followed it right back at 2019. I don't know why I believed I'd covered it. And I think maybe when I'd heard about it, that there was still a lot in the air. And then over the years, I've kind of seen different things online about it. But I genuinely believed I had. And then I realised, and although they are different stories and they're very similar in a different way, I think, and it sounds awful to admit, but I think I might have confused it with Judah Morgan. Another horrific story I'd done quite a while ago. And when I would come across AJ's story, for some reason my brain had said I'd done this. And because I'd known so much about it, and I wasn't hearing anything that I didn't kind of know, really, I just presumed I'd done it. So I apologise for that. It has been requested a couple of times, to be honest, but I never really, it'd get requested and I'd be like, just have a look, I've done it. And I checked and I raked through my pre-recorded videos or my live videos. I mean, I've got 280 uploaded now, and I genuinely haven't done it. So I'm bringing it to you tonight, okay? So we're going to begin the story with Andrew's parents, okay? That's how we're going to begin it. We'll just do a little bit of a background on them. Not too much. Don't like doing it. Don't like anything in these cases that could lead to any sort of sympathy of any sort. I don't think you will, but I don't want that. I don't like that. But I also like to make sure you've had all the information. All right. So we're going to start off with Joanne Cunningham. All right. Which is AJ's mom. Okay. Now, Joanne, don't know much about her too much in her early life. Okay. Other than her parents broke up. Her dad was an alcoholic. But her mum was apparently okay, as far as I know. Like I say, don't know a vast amount about her early life. But when she was 16, okay, she was in a relationship, obviously young, and got pregnant for her first son, and his name's Austin. All right, he was born in 2000. Now, I'm not going to talk much about Austin. Don't know a lot about him, other than obviously what I'll put across to you. But that was her first son, with what I can work out would be her first love. Now, she stayed with this man for quite a long time, but he was, now remember, she was only 16, okay? And he was very violent, it said, okay? She put up with it for quite a while. She was actually a talented artist, Joanne was. Maybe could have had, maybe if her life path had gone a different way. I don't know. But it does say that, again, it's based on her saying it, that she had been abused as a child. Okay, don't know if there's any truth to that, but it does say that. And she sticks with him. She sticks with him for quite a while. It's said that she was a good mom originally. Just say she was, her own mom says this. Now, in 2004, Joanne is 21 and she leaves this boyfriend and takes Austin and moves back to her mum's. And as I said, this is where her mum saw a lot of her as a mum. And she said she was really good. She said she was really good with little Austin originally. Okay. Now, the parents that I'm talking about, meaning her mum, and at this point it was Joanne's stepdad, they also helped to raise Austin from there going forward, should I say. Now, Joanne, she goes to cosmetology school. And while she's there, that's why her parents, or her mum and stepdad, were looking after Austin. And she becomes qualified. Okay, so again, she's been in a bad situation. Looks like she's trying to get herself together. And in 2006, at this point, she's around 23. She meets a man who's in the Marine Corps. Okay. They get on very well. And in 2009, they get engaged and they get married. Okay. All seems like this should be her happy ending for her and her little boy. It should be. But as I said, she went to cosmetology school and obviously got a job. And she was stood up in this role all day. And she started to struggle with her back. She started to get very severe back pain. Okay. And as anyone who has struggled with constant pain, the doctors will give you prescription pills. Okay. Well, Joanne's prescription pills were very, very, very strong. She was on morphine, she was on Percocet, she was on oxycodone, which are, don't believe we've got them here, and if we have, I've never come across them. Obviously the morphine we have, but the Percocet and the what did I just call them then? Oxycodone. And she became quickly addicted to them. All right. And when the doctor eventually was like, could see that she was becoming very tolerant of these tablets and then became addicted to them, he tried to bring her down off them and take her off them. Now, you can't do that with such strong medication, and I don't know what help she was getting, but she was removed from those meds to the point where she'd start paying for them. She'd get them where she could. And I say of course, but it's a slippery slope. And before you know it, she starts hitting much harder drugs that aren't prescription pills. Okay. So it was a very slippery slope for this woman. And her new husband, as I've said, who was in the Marine Corps, he's noticing this real change from this very fresh, bright looking woman to this very angry, paranoid woman she was becoming. Not only that, she was becoming very violent with him, really violent. He doesn't put up with it. And in 2011, I've fast-tracked there. In 2011, she becomes a foster carer. I mean, did they do any checks? You've got this woman not only addicted to prescription painkillers, which you can be fine on, and you can cope throughout your day. You can be perfectly fine on them as long as you don't abuse them. But she's done that. She's now buying them, and she's also taking much harder substances. And they're like, oh, do you know what? we'll give you a foster kid. I mean, but in 2012, she gets divorced. He can't pull up with her anymore. She's just lost her mind, and he divorces her. Okay, and so in 2012, age 29, sorry, she's in the courthouse. She can't afford a solicitor or a lawyer to help her with this divorce that she's going through. And it said that she was in the corridor with her head down, crying her eyes out. And along comes a knight in shining armour, apparently, a man called Andrew Freund. Okay, now Andrew, I've heard he was nicknamed Drew. Only heard that in one or two sources, so we're going to stick to Andrew for his name. Okay, now Andrew, who she meets in this hallway while she's very upset. Andrew, I'll give you a little bit of backstory on him. Apparently a very nice guy, very intelligent, a lot older than Joanne. He'd qualified with a law degree right back in 1977. This was before she'd even been born. But it said he was a really good guy in his teens, very hard work, very, hardworking, very clever. As I mentioned, he gets his law degree. I think he got a degree or a bachelor's in accounting as well. But he starts to struggle with alcohol. And he started drinking in his colleges, but as some people will see that for what it is, and it's a bit of fun, you've got this, real life really hasn't kicked in at that point. So you can, go out, have fun, party, drink, it's fun. But he struggles once he leaves college to leave that part of the life behind. And he slowly does become he becomes an alcoholic. Okay. Now, in 1994, he actually gets asked to leave the law firm he'd been working for because of this drinking, because he just wasn't reliable. So he realizes, right, I need help. I'm really struggling here. So he gets help, but he finds it really hard to stay on the wagon. Okay, he falls off quite regular. It seems like he did try. It seems like he does try over the years that are going along. He does try to get himself straight. It would appear so, but he just can't stick to it. Okay. Now, he also begins using opioids. It's just awful. Just wish that word never invented, because it's the not. Is it the cause? Would you say the cause? I suppose so. Of a lot of bad things that happen to people. Begin with, oh, I had to take, it's a bad sign. Now, he continues practicing law, but he has to practice it from home, okay, because obviously he's got nowhere to work. And in 2012, because he's not getting a lot of work, because he hasn't got his own firm, he hasn't got an office building, he hasn't got an office, it's from his home. He has to get a part-time job just to help him out financially. And this is when he meets Joanne Cunningham. And it was, as I mentioned, he's walking along the corridor at the courts, and he sees this woman, head in hands, crying her eyes out. And he asks her what's going on, and she explains, my husband is going to take everything, and I can't afford, a lawyer and everything else. And he feels so sorry for her that he agrees to take the case. I mean, I've seen Joanne, and the photos, the majority of the photos online, she looks awful. She looks, can I say it? She looks like a typical crackhead. Okay, I don't know if I should have said that. I've said it now. But that's what she looks like. If you would put that word in the dictionary and put her face beside it, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's what it is. That's what. But in the earlier years, when he meets her, and when he met her, should I say, she's quite an attractive looking woman. She looks fresh, she looks quite healthy. Obviously hiding a lot of what was going on, because at this point she was severely addicted to drugs. But she could pass at that point. She didn't look too bad. So obviously, and she's a lot younger than him. So he must have just seen stars in his eyes and been like, oh my God. So he offers to help her, as I said. Now, not long after that, Joanne and Andrew, they do begin kind of an affair. It starts off, I believe, quite slowly at first. Well, slowly, I don't know if you can say slowly. It's in I don't know. It wasn't, she didn't move in with him straight away, let's say that. We'll just leave that. But she, over this period of time, she's now started to become very paranoid. And the violence is ramping up, even more so. And she's becoming paranoid of the ex-husband, okay? Now, she's still in that house, but because of the paranoia and because of the state she'd allowed that house to get into, oh, apparently it's a hole. Now, I hadn't seen this house that I'm talking about. I can only base it on later pictures that I see. But this woman, I mean, you might not necessarily have to consider yourself, you know, what would you call it? Like a clean freak, or, you know, Mary Poppins. I can't think of a character name, but you might not consider yourself that. But, you know, you don't let rats run around your house either. She was just, I mean, it was disgusting. So a foster child gets taken. Austin has to leave and go to the parents. You know, that her mum and her stepdad. You know, things go downhill quite quickly. And there's Andrew. There's Andrew just there. Like, well, come and live with me. Did he not see real red flags? You know, did this young blonde girl really turn his head to the point where he'll be like, it's okay, it's fine, it's okay, I don't mind. I mean, he was so much older than her, he should have known better. But he says, come on, you can move in with me. Now, what he didn't realise is that Joanne was not only obviously being divorced from her ex-husband, but she was being done for $20,000 worth of damage for destroying the man's house that she'd remained in. She trashed it before she left. She absolutely trashed it. Appliances, well, just everything. She destroyed. I mean, $20,000. That's a fair bit of damage. Okay, so she moves in with Andrew, and I believe they moved to Crystal Lake in Illinois. I should have said at the beginning, it's an American story. Okay, and he did live with somebody. Andrew did, like a housemate. And this fella said that within 2 days of her moving in, she just got so violent with him straight away. You know, that she didn't even try and hold. That's why I got a little bit of tongue-tied earlier when I was on about the time frame of them getting together, because she's just moved in, and within 2 days she's beating him. So that makes me think it has to have been going on beforehand, and he's still like, no, come on, come over here. You can live with me. I can take it. You know, look. Anyway, so that's a little roundup of the parents. Okay. Now, on the 14th of October 2013, Andrew Thomas Freund Jr. was born. Okay. It's such a shame, because he was born into such a violent home, and while she was giving birth, the nurses noticed track marks on Joanne's arms. Little Andrew was born with opiates in his system. Okay, it's very sad. Now, his name was shortened down to the initials AJ. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna call him for the rest of the story, which is why I will go on and call his dad Andrew. Dad, we're gonna do the fingers are coming out again. They're right. Okay. Now AJ, because of being opiate addicted upon birth, he was removed from the couple, okay, and he was given to one of Joanne's cousins. All right, that's so that's what should have happened. She's already okay. She's already had her eldest son Austin taken away. The foster child's been taken away. Oh, been attacked. Sorry. The Austin's been taken away. The foster child's been taken away. Little AJ's been taken away. Okay? This has happened now. All right? So that should have been it. But no. All right? Parker, AJ's little brother, was born 14 months later. Okay? On the 30th of December 2014. And for some reason, DCFS thought, which is Child Services in Illinois, they thought, well, we'll leave this one with her. We'll leave Parker with her. Because, seems like maybe she might be all right now. It's only been 14 months, but okay. What? Because maybe he hadn't got drugs in his system. It's okay. She's had 3 kids taken away. 2 biological, 1 foster. But okay. 4th time lucky. Let's go. Or 3rd time, the 3rd boy lucky. I mean, just ridiculous. So with Parker being able to remain with the happy couple, they do return AJ back to them when he's about 18 months old. Okay? It's just very sad. The DCFS give him back and they're like, go on, you'll be okay now. You can, let's go. Let's see how you get on. Right, now we're going to come up to the 18th of April 2019. Okay? And it's about 8 a.m. All right? And there's a 911 call made by Andrew. Okay? And in the phone call, he's very calm. Very, very calm. And he begins with, we have a missing child. Not my son's missing. Not his age. Not anything. We have a missing child. Says this twice. And the operator's like, well, how old are you? The dad? And he's like, yeah. And he's 5. At this point, little AJ, he's 5. Because Parker's 4, so it's quite obviously he's talking about AJ. And he says, we've searched everywhere. And the operator does say, are you sure you've searched everywhere? And are you sure you've searched everywhere? Meaning, have you searched everywhere in the house, I'm presuming? And the dad's like, yeah, I've looked in the park and the and the streets and I've gone to the petrol station. I've had a real good look round. What? He's like, yes, I have looked in the basement. I've looked at underbeds and stuff, and yeah, but I did also look, on the streets and the park and the school. The local school. The child's 5? What are you talking about? So I can imagine being the operator being so confused, so confused by this. Especially when the operator says, well, were the doors unlocked? No. Were the windows unlocked? No. I bet the operator's thinking in his head, well, how the hell did he get out then, you moron? Okay, so police arrive. And again, Joanne hasn't changed her housekeeping ways. Let's just say that. In fact, they've got a lot worse. All right. It's a complete hole they're walking into. It's disgusting. It's vile. I've seen pictures of it. It genuinely is. It's one of them where even though you can't obviously, because you're looking at a picture, you can smell it. Even though you can't, obviously you can't physically smell it, but you can. It's that bad. Pictures are online. It's disgusting. It really is. It's vile. So there's animal feces everywhere. There's human feces everywhere. There's holes in the wall that went down to the basement. It's just riddled with cockroaches. There's mice. It's just vile. So they ask, can they look in AJ's room? And what they notice when they get to AJ's door is that there's a lock on the outside. It's never a good sign. We always notice that in these stories, don't we? There's always the lock. There's always the lock on the outside. When they open the door, there's mice droppings all in the rooms. There's obviously mice in this poor little boy's bedroom. Okay, bedroom's obviously just as awful. The smell apparently was horrific, just of urine and feces, and just awful. That it said that the police were gagging while being in there, and they're used to some seriously bad conditions, and it was supposed to be terrible. They noticed that the windows in the room had been nailed down. Just not a good sign. Not a good sign. Okay. Now the police, given the state of this place they've just walked into, they called DCFS straight away. And they come and they take Parker. Now don't forget, these parents have reported their child missing. But the police straight away, as I've said, DCFS swoop in and take Parker. Now, it's a shame DCFS weren't that quick over the past couple of years, but I'll get to that. Okay, so Parker's removed, and Joanne, she's just there. Like, I don't know where he is. I don't know. He was put to bed at 9:30 last night, and I don't know what's happened. Okay, it's not really too helpful. Andrew's saying very similar. Look, we don't know. He was put to bed. Look, he's missing. You're just going to have to help us. We don't know what's going on. Police are looking around, seeing these strung out parents. They're seeing the house they're living in. They took their dog. They had a box called Lucy. So the dog's taken. And the funniest part of it, the dog, I saw it when the dog was walked out. The dog didn't actually look too bad, which, don't get me wrong, I'm glad. But I just mean, given the circumstances, I was surprised at how healthy the dog looked, okay? Now, as I've said, they were saying he was put to bed at 9:30. They've woke up and he's gone, all right? The police go out and check with the neighbours. Some of the neighbours didn't even know that there was kids living in that house. Now, this house was known with the residents of that particular area. It was only a small town they lived in because of how bad it looked. There was some windows in the house that didn't look like they even closed. They looked half broke. The grass was always left to grow 2 foot high. It was that sort of house. You'd hear shouting from there a lot. The neighbours were telling the police, it was that Joanne, or the woman that lived there, as they would say, she seemed quite an aggressive character. But a few of them did say, look, we didn't even know there was kids living there. And, the police are saying, look, it's a 5-year-old boy. He's missing. We need to know anything you can tell us. So, the police really are trying. Now, the search begins. And the following day, which would be the 19th of April 2019, there's no sign of little AJ. And this boy, can I just say, adorable. Just a gorgeous, very cute little boy. It really, really is. So the photos are released, you know, with the press and everything else, TV news. Crews turn up onto the road outside the house. And Joanne, she comes out to do a press interview. No, hold on, let me rewind that. No, her lawyer with her come out to do a press interview. This is the day after she's reported her son missing, and she stood there in front of the press with her lawyer. And you might be like, well, what did she say? You know, was she begging for help? Was she, you know, maybe thinking he's been abducted? No, she didn't speak. She didn't say anything. She just cried into his shoulder. The lawyer, that is. You know what? She's moving on to another lawyer. But she just cries into his shoulder. And the lawyer just says she's not guilty of anything. Oh, okay, so she's guilty then. Because who says that? Who says that? And the lawyer basically says, you know, she was, what's the word I'm looking for? She was cooperating with the police until she thought maybe they were questioning her or looking at her a certain way. So she felt she had to get there. And I've advised her not to speak. What'd you go out for then? What's the lawyer doing there? Why did you... I was so confused by the whole farce of this so-called press conference where you're supposed to be out there begging for help to find your little boy. He's 5 years old. You know, and it's April. I'm presuming it's not very warm still. You know, you should be absolutely begging the world to help you find your little boy. And she's not. She's not. There was nothing. It was more of a defense of her the next day. It was very, very bizarre. So Andrew and Joanna brought in for questioning quite rightly. Okay. Now Andrew begins his sort of interrogation by telling the police, you know, rather than saying, look, why am I in here? Why aren't we out looking for my son? Or, look, what do you need from me, you know, for me to help you to find my son? I need to know where he is. I need to know what you need from me. Why are we in here? What are we out? Have you got people out looking? Rather than that being the course of the conversation, no. How the conversation actually went was Andrew's describing how, you know, stubborn AJ is and he's headstrong and he's naughty. You know, just quite negative about this beautiful little lad. It's just shocking. It's shocking. He's still missing. And you're talking negatively about your little boy. And he would say that, yes, AJ would get punished. You know, when he was naughty, he would get spanked. But he said, but for the most part, I'm at work, so I don't see a lot of it. And I'm not around. I'm not there with the boys a lot of the time anyway. And now the FBI are involved, okay? Now, the reason Andrew was making this point is apparently he would leave the house at 6 o'clock in the morning. He wouldn't return till 9:30 at night. This was his kind of, look, I don't know what's going on. I'm never there. This is where Andrew's kind of coming from, okay? FBI are now involved, as I've said. The phones, Joanne and Andrew's phones are confiscated, okay? And the first thing they find is on the 15th of April 2019 at 3 a.m., which is 3 days before AJ is reported missing. There's a Google search of child CPR. Okay? It's a little bit odd. A little bit of an odd sort of search. The house gets searched as well. And we get to the 24th of April 2019, and by this point, little AJ has been missing for 6 days. It's just... And Andrew finally tells the police, because he's got to have known. Everyone has got to have known it's all been a lie. And he finally tells them what happened. Okay? AJ had actually died on the evening of the 14th of April 2019. 4 days before they'd actually reported him missing. Okay? Which worked out would have been when that Google search was made, which was the early hours. Okay? So, he had been... Andrew says he'd actually been woken up by Joanne saying that AJ wasn't breathing. Alright? The Google search is obviously done. And they put AJ in his room and just left him to die. He wasn't breathing. They could have got him help. They could have done something. But I'm going to tell you why they didn't get any help for this little boy. But they leave him there to die and he passes away. Okay. Now, Andrew, then, even once his little boy's passed away, he doesn't, like, right, okay, we've still got to call the ambulance, we've got to call the police, we've got to do something. No. He puts AJ, he wraps him in plastic, he puts him in a bag, and he puts him in the basement until the 17th of April, which is 3 days after he's died, okay, and a day before the 911 call. And on the 17th of April, he drives to a wooded area about 8 miles away, and he buries him in a shallow grave. Absolutely disgusting. Now, Andrew explains to the police that Joanne, from when AJ was really young, don't forget, he got returned when he was 18 months old to this sham of a couple, okay? Now, I don't know if this was why, maybe, I don't know, maybe she didn't have a connection with him because, you know, he'd been taken out of her care pretty much straight away, and then she's got back this 18-month-old going into a toddler who had had a really good life. He thrived with her cousin, and now she's got him back, and maybe she just couldn't cope with him. It said that she was fine with Parker, apart from him living in deplorable conditions, but she was just not good with AJ from the minute he came back. And he says she was really, really aggressive to this little boy from the minute he come back, as I've said. And at one point, because Andrew wouldn't be in the house a lot, on the odd times he was at home and he would see her beating the life out of this little boy, okay? He says, well, why don't you give him showers instead as the punishment? Well, okay, so you've got this absolute psychopath beating the life out of your child, and you give her ideas. You give her ideas of what to do with him. And he was like, I just thought that rather than him being beaten as a punishment, a cold shower might be better. So that's what she used to do. She never stopped beating him. She just added the cold showers onto her list of punishments freezing cold showers. He was 5. Well, this started. I mean, there's proof of going right back to when he was 3 years old, which I'll tell you about in a second. So it's believed that this had been ongoing from when he was returned to her. Okay. Now, on the night that AJ died, what had happened was, oh, it's such a shame. He'd sold his underwear, okay, and he'd hid them. I mean, that in itself is heartbreaking, that he's hiding his underwear because he's so scared of what's going to happen if she finds them. And he hides his underwear, and she does find them. So she beats him. She beats his child. And then she puts him in the shower, this freezing, ice cold shower. And basically, oh, Andrew's at home. Let me just say that. That's how he knows what happened, because he was there. And him and her were walking in, you know, every few minutes into the shower, interrogating him, trying to get him to admit that he'd hidden the underwear. And apparently he kept on lying. He kept lying to them. He ended up staying in that freezing ice cold water for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. He wasn't just under, she was beating him around the head with that shower head, trying to get it out of him that it was him who'd hid the underwear. Who else was it? Who else was it? The fact that he wasn't saying who it was, he must have thought if he owns up, it's going to be worse. Or he was just terrified to tell them because it'd be what. Oh my God, it's just horrible. It's just horrible to think about. It's absolutely heartbreaking to think of this little boy in that shower getting beaten with the shower head and standing under ice cold water, and he wouldn't say that it was him who put the underwear there. And 20 minutes this went on for, until eventually Andrew took him out. Didn't put a towel around him, didn't dry him, didn't put him by a heater, nothing. Just took him out and put him into that, you can't even call it a bed, but just put him into his so-called bed. Cold, wet and naked. And left him there. So, of course, then when Joanne, for whatever reason, went in to look on him and he wasn't breathing, which is when she woke Andrew up, and rather than getting him help there and then, they just let him die. Just left him there to die. Oh, just utterly heartbreaking. So we get to the 24th of April 2019, which is 6 days after they reported him missing, but it's actually 10 days after little AJ had been murdered. And Andrew takes the police to where he'd buried him, okay? Now an autopsy's done, and with the autopsy there's proof of long-term abuse on this child. His body just told everything. His cause of death was actually a swollen brain. It was swelling to his brain. It, you know, as we know with a brain injury, if your brain starts to swell, it's got nowhere to go inside your skull. So it starts to go down your back because it's got nowhere to go, and it just keeps swelling. It said it would have been agonising for this little boy in his last couple of hours. He had multiple blunt force injuries to his head, his stomach, his arms, his legs. As I've said, severe head swelling. He had blood in his lungs. lot of injuries on the outside of his head, many bruises, lacerations, abrasions. He was just black and blue, head to toe. Just tiny little fella. He really was. And if you see the photos of him, he's just some kids that you look at and you just like, the word adorable comes to your head to describe them. And that's just, when you look at him, that's the word that comes to my head. The community who'd been worrying about this little lad and hoping he gets brought home. Don't forget, the community, it's a small town. They believe this child's missing. At this point, they believe he's been missing for 6 days. So they're advised what's happened. They're utterly devastated. They're very upset. You can see on the news reports, you know, there's a lot. There's one mum who's holding a child who looks like he's crying into her shoulder. Very, very sad. Andrew and Joanna arrested and charged with his murder, of course. But at this point, they find out that Joanna's pregnant. And you'd be like, oh my God, when did they have time? Well, they didn't. Joanne and Andrew aren't necessarily together. It's very weird. They're living together. He's there while she's beating the life out of his son and neglecting his other one. You know, even if he's just about being fed, he's living in squalor. And she's actually not only got another boyfriend, she's engaged. She has a fiance with a felon. So yeah, she's pregnant with this guy's baby. Okay. My God. 10th of May 2019, the both of them, even though Andrew came out and he told the police everything that had happened, laid it all at her door, obviously. He was just an innocent bystander and he didn't know what to do. They both plead not guilty. I'm very baffled by that. 31st of May 2019, Joanne gives birth to a little girl who's promptly removed from her care, obviously. There is a CBS interview around this time and with Joanne, and it's just, it's embarrassing. She's just ridiculous. She just really, really is. She's just vile, absolutely vile. She tries to justify when she's not talking about herself, and she does talk about AJ. It's just very, very, very negative. She says he had ODD, which is opposition defiance disorder. No, he didn't. She's just vile. She justifies beating him because he'd wet himself. You know, she thinks she was perfectly within her rights to. Sorry, just smacking him, not beating him, you know, relentlessly. No, she just smacked him. But she sees nothing wrong with that. But by the 5th of December 2019, so 6 months later, after pleading not guilty, she pleads guilty. Okay? Now that a sentencing hearing comes about, to go through the evidence just like they would if a trial was going ahead, just the same as if she'd have kept her not guilty plea, okay? Where the prosecution has to go through everything they've got together, so the judge can make a decision on what sentencing needs to be given, okay? I believe the prosecution wanted 60 years, I believe. On the 31st of October 2017, okay, sorry, I've fast-tracked a little bit. This is related to all the evidence the prosecution has got, including witnesses, okay? So, if you remember, we're going to go back a little bit. If you remember, I mentioned that there's proof that she was really, really badly damaging this little boy right back to when he was 3, okay? We go back to the 31st of October 2017. It's Halloween. Should be a really exciting time for kids. It really should be. It should be. You know, they get to dress up, they go out and play trick or treat. It's all fun. Well, a neighbour, these are the witnesses, a neighbour comes forward as a witness and says that Joanne had knocked on the door with the two boys. I believe Parker was there. And she's looking, and when she looks at AJ, he's got bandages all around his head, and she thinks he's been dressed up as a mummy at first. But as she's looking a bit closer, it's late. They've turned up on her doorstep quite late, okay? And when she looks a bit closer, she notices that he's actually got burns to his head, and there's hair missing. And Joanne she just basically tries to dismiss it quite quickly, and she's like, oh, you know, he poured boiling water on himself. Turns out she'd done that. He was 3 years old and she threw a pot of boiling hot water over him. Another neighbour saw AJ on this night as well. And then another neighbour at a different time is walking her dog, and she sees Parker. Now, don't forget, he's 14 months younger than AJ. She's him outside in the car with just a nappy on, it's freezing. And he's screaming, I'm cold. And she can hear that his so-called parents are in the house. He's outside in the car. They're in the house. She can hear them screaming at each other, killing each other in the house. Okay? And as she's there, stood there, not knowing what to do, like, does she report this? What does she do? Does she call the police? This child's out here. He's got, you know, it's freezing. Joanne apparently comes out, sees her staring, threatens her. You know, it's just a vile, vicious, horrible woman. Threatens her, you know, don't you phone the police, don't you do anything. I don't think this woman really was, you know, someone to argue. And she does walk away. Now, I believe these neighbours all called DCFS, okay? And they weren't the only ones, all right? There was police that had called DCFS on this couple. There was doctors that called DCFS on this couple over those couple of years. Joanne was in the hospital at one point, and Andrew brings AJ with him to come and visit her. She was brought in through a drug, something to do with a drug. I don't think she'd had an overdose. I think it was something to do with the drugs. And the doctor sees little AJ, and he's got a black eye. He's all bruised. His head swollen. And he calls DCFS. Then another time, with Joanne had been pulled up by the police. Police say AJ. These are all different occasions. Sees AJ, he's bruised again. He insists on him being taken to the doctors. So the policeman had spoke to AJ in front of Joanne, and Joanne was like, Lucy did it, didn't she? Lucy did it. Lucy, if you remember, is their dog. When they get to the doctors, AJ, he does actually speak to the doctor on his own. Or the doctor speaks to AJ on his own, should I say. And the doctor's asking, you know, what happened? And he wouldn't say. Well, at first he said it was the dog. He stuck to what he'd been told. Then he says it was someone, but I can't say who it is. And then he says, Mummy did not mean to hurt me. And it's just, so he's admitting that it was his mummy, but he's still basically holding on to the fact that I don't know if he's trying to convince the doctor or he's trying to convince himself that she didn't do it on purpose. It's just horrible. He'd been pushed downstairs. As I said, he had hot boiling water thrown over him more than one occasion. As then you add in the beatings and it just how for 3.5 years after he'd been sent back to her. On the 4th of March 2019, there's actually a video, okay? Joanne's recorded him. She loved to record him. Oh, she loved to record AJ. I'm not going to lie. I've heard and I've seen a couple. I don't recommend them. I don't. They're very, very upsetting. And in one of the recordings, he's bruised, he's got bandages around him, and she's screaming at him because he's wet himself. You know, this is as you've noticed, there's a pattern with this wetting himself. How can he not? He's terrified. Of course he's going to wet himself. There's another one on the 17th of March 2019 where he's bruised. On the 18th of March, this is the one that it genuinely did. As I've said, I think there was Tegan Skyber. There's been a couple where you can hear about things that happen to children. You know, Matthew Creekmore. You can hear about it, but when you see pictures or when you hear video or see and you can hear and watch video, it adds a whole other emotion to you, because you're watching something now and there's nothing you can do about it. So to hear it and just like I'm telling you now, it's heartbreaking, it's upsetting, but then to see the little boy and the voice of just utter hatred behind the camera, who's his so-called mother, it's so upsetting. It is. And basically he's saying he wants someone to take her away, and basically so she won't hurt him, you know, so she's not around him anymore. He believes family's there to hurt him. He doesn't want a family. You know, that's what I'm taking from it. And she then starts saying, you know, do you think, she's basically saying, do you think your dad's going to help you? You know, what makes you think? He'll never choose you over me and Parker, ever. And it's just, he's 5. Oh, God. And she then grabs him by the throat. She bangs his head against the wall. She's just, it's vile. It's vile. Did I see that bit? No, I didn't. But what I saw was enough. It was enough. I couldn't watch anymore. I just couldn't. Now, the sentences, Joanne, she gives a speech. It's just very self-involved. She's sentenced to 35 years. Andrew took a plea deal, okay? So he pled guilty. Remember, he had pled not guilty. He takes a plea deal. He's given 30 years, but he can get parole after 19 years, all right? He was disbarred, though. So even when if and when he is released, okay, he won't be working. Certainly not in a law. My word's gone. My brain's gone. I'm sorry, just thinking about that poor little lad. Yeah, he won't be working in the law field anyway. Okay. Now Joanne, she has the audacity to appeal. Yes, she does, in 2022, which is denied. So she'll be released in 2054. I've worked out she'll be about 71 when she's released. I just hope she just doesn't get out of there in one piece. Let me just say it that way. Okay, now DCFS, as I've mentioned, were called many times. Okay, there was 26 visits to the home in 2015 to 2016 alone. And apparently at that point, everything was okay. It wasn't too bad, apparently. So the case was then closed, but doctors have made reports, police made reports, there was neighbours called in, there was just nothing done, okay? And the guy who'd been in charge of the case for AJ was a man by the name of Carlos Acosta. And in September of 2023, him and his supervisor were brought in before the courts. They were, okay? There was a trial for the two of them, all right? Now, the prosecution were just like, you couldn't care less. You just couldn't. Now, apparently, DCFS, child welfare and everything else, they come under a kind of an immunity, okay? Which is why when we have these stories, it's very, very rare that anything's ever done. Even Gabriel Fernandez, there was nothing done. They all had to go to trial and everything else, but nothing was done. But I think what it is, they have to prove that they did everything they could within the guidelines they have, and they didn't see anything, you know, the parent was clever or the parent lied, or, you know, everything looked okay when they were there, or they felt they couldn't do anything because the guidelines wouldn't allow them. So they've got a lot of leeway when they mess up. Well, Carlos Acosta, yeah, he didn't do. He could have got AJ and Parker out of there. He could have. There was more than enough. There was more than adequate proof that them kids shouldn't have been in that home. But he didn't. He went to that home. And I've described it to you many, many times throughout this story. He didn't do anything. And as I said, the prosecution just says, you couldn't care less. So in 2024, Carlos Acosta, he was found guilty. And he was jailed for 6 months. I was shocked. Not shocked that it happened. Oh, definitely should have got longer. Just the fact that it happened at all. Now, his supervisor was found not guilty. Supervisor was found that he'd done everything that he's supposed to do, apparently. But yeah, he hadn't. And 6 months in jail, which, as I've said, I was very shocked by, but not happy with Andrew and Joanne's sentences. I don't think they should have ever have any chance of ever getting out of prison at all for I will say he's a grown man. She wasn't even with him. She was pregnant by another man, still living in his house. And he still stood by her. When she told him AJ had died and he'd gone out, I've heard from 2 or 3 different sources, he just says, I'll sort it. Like a knight in shining armour. Why wasn't he that knight in shining armour for his son? His son, who I believe probably thought, because Andrew, it was said, didn't really smack the kids. He said he did now and again, but he didn't really. I think AJ would have seen him as his knight in shining armour and thought, you know, maybe Daddy will take me away. But he didn't. He watched her kill him. He put him to bed. Oh, just the thought of that little boy in the bed. But that was the heartbreaking A.J. Freund story. Ugh, God. Just, oh, horrible. Sorry if I've stuttered a few times during this. I know I do stutter as a general rule, but probably more so in this. It just, as I was talking about the video recordings, you know, it's playing over. Like I say, I wouldn't recommend listening to it at all. They genuinely are heartbreaking. His little voice, yeah, it's just rotten. It's just absolutely rotten. I mean, I'm glad they're both locked up, but I just wish they'd never see the light of day again. Shocked at DCFS. You know, we need more of that. Maybe there'll be more maybe they'll make that bit more of an effort in the, you know, if they think that they'll be held to account. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. I'm here every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Tuesdays are my request evening. Thursdays are that I like to bring to you. Like I say, I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next time. I'll see you Thursday. Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.